I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, maybe you don't want to talk about it.
We'll see.
We'll see. About the way that you engage with her own drawings as well, your initial responses and the journey that it took you as an artist, as a visual artist.
Yeah.
If you
No,
want
I'm
to,
very willing to talk about that. Yeah. So basically, what happened was I spent a huge amount of time researching and developing the project and getting funding. All of which time I couldn't be in the studio, and I was desperate to have the funding and go ahead. And once I got into the studio, I sort of just allowed the feelings that I had with all the research inside me to just, plough on and I did some sketches, and I just wanted to really get going. And I had thought, my proposal to the Arts Council is that I would work with abstract line. So I'm very intrigued by some of Felicia's, so if you look at them as little kind of, it's almost if you take a box, you see some really interesting lines emerge. And because I'm an abstract artist, I thought, well, I'm just going to abstract lines and work with that, and work with this idea of point and flat. And when I got into the studio and I was looking more specifically at the kind of lines I would want to abstract, as you'll see from the paintings, I felt compelled to become a bit more figurative. And it felt to me as though in studying her line, I had to kind of take it on in a way, and it's my interpretation that I had sort of felt, it felt as though that was part of the conversation with her, that I had to use her language, and just at some point I actually felt, well, are these paintings actually my paintings anymore? Is this my identity? I felt a bit nervous. I thought, when people see these paintings, they're going to think, what's happened to Sonia? And I don't know if you may not have noticed, but as the stages begin, the paintings are quite analytical, and they have more representational quotations from Felicia's work. So some of those figures really are taken from her drawings. And then when we get to Paris, I kind of have a meltdown and have to sort of just say, okay, this is me, I'm a abstract artist, I work with gesture, and I have to come back into this process somehow because Felicia's taken me over. And basically I need some space here. So that's Paris, which was an important moment. We don't have much visual material for Paris at all. And what we have is the letter, and the letter is incredibly emotional. So I had to sort of go back to my own language of emotional expression, and looking at the internal landscape. So that was Paris. And then it kind of goes on into the border, which became very different from how I imagined it would be. And again, that's me, my language. And then sort of, it's almost as though Felicia can come back in the final two stages where I'm sort of being a bit more sort of thinking about it as a memorial. So we've gone beyond her origins, looking quite analytically at her political engagement. We've gone into the disaster zone that was Paris for her, because the minute she set out on this journey, it was doomed. And so we have that, and then I managed to get some breathing space, and then I go into sort of more of a sort of tribute piece, the final two paintings. So that's how it worked for me. It was a kind of almost drowning in it at certain points of the kind of power of her expressive form, because it really is extraordinary. She's just unbelievably talented. So yeah.
There's one thing I haven't mentioned, yes, and is that Sonia was invited to talk about this project at Women's Hour, and this is available online, so if you want to listen to it, it's quite interesting. So I'm sure there's lots of people really wanting to ask you questions. I think I should just shut up and yes, Frank, you want to ask? Cause,
I want to ask a question that is something I might actually touch on myself tomorrow. Depends. I need to cut stuff out, and that might go. But it was a kind of comment you made, sort of just slightly in passing, about the collaboration between yourself and Jenny. You said that you both work with line.
Yes.
And I just wondered if you'd say a little bit more about that in terms of the, obviously as someone who works with words, as a poet, and you're working with art?
The dynamic between us has been really interesting. The curator, it's so sad. I was hoping to bring a booklet for everyone, but it didn't get printed in time. So the curator talks about this as an echo that happens throughout the exhibition that we will show throughout the project. So at the very, very beginning, when Jenny and I first met and we talked about working on this project, we looked at the Tate Archive, which you can look at. It's been digitalised, it's online. And we looked at the letters and the drawings, and we developed this idea of line, that we both would be looking at line, but that I would be looking at the drawings. That would be my primary research tool, and that she would be looking at the letters. But what is so fascinating about Felicia is that, and you'll see in some of the examples of her letters, is that of course writing uses the same gestures very often as drawing, and you can see so much. I was saying to you, I don't think I managed to send you the image in the end, I think I forgot, but our other source has been to look at the MI5 file on Felicia that's held at the National Archives, and they have some of her very final notes from I think, I don't know, from Tardienta, but from her first billet. She signs them very quickly, just with an F. And it is such a flourish. I'd have to take a photograph of one. It was such a flourish. It just looks like it could be, one of these sort of very beautiful lines that she uses in her drawing. And so I think Jenny and I, both in our own ways, Jenny has abstracted phrases, and also phrases have become incorporated into my work and my thinking. So, for example, I'm trying to think if I'm getting this right now, for the Paris stage. See, Felicia has such wonderful turns of phrase as well. So the quotation from the Paris letter is, and I, knowing no one, had nothing to do but wander savagely about the streets. Because when she arrived in Paris, her friend Edith dumped her and went off with some other sort of more important, exciting friends, and Felicia was left alone. And so this idea of wandering savagely became sort of almost the theme for Paris. And I think it may even be my title, or in the title, for Paris, because each painting has a separate title as well as being the stage. I think it is called Wandering Savagely.
Is it your title? And when you first see it, it seems a little bit strange.
Yes.
But then when you hear the poem,
yes,
the whole thing just lights up, and it kind of makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the things have been completely coincidental, and down to the fantastic work of Simon Haynes on the film, because it wasn't until I saw the detail of part of Paris with the gestures that I put in there, and Jenny's line, I think, is Paris swirls in my head. Well, it's a perfect match. And this is what we were hoping to do somehow, that when we conceived of the project and we thought about the 7 stages, we thought that it was almost like we would both be looking at the same moment, but obviously coming from our different forms, and yet hoping that at some points we would arrive at the same sort of, language, and somehow we did, the same metaphor, somehow we did. So that happens quite frequently throughout. But she wrote separately and I painted separately, so that's amazing. With lots of conversations.
Of course, and obviously these conversations are informing what you're doing back in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. She led me on a red herring for the Paris stage. She sent me some visual information, and it was to do with a monument in Paris, and it was before I had. It's a fantastic visual source, and I'm very grateful to have seen it. It's a picture of a lion, the Lion of Belfort, I think, and it was a fantastic. It would have been a fantastic painting and a fantastic symbol, and I have it as a sketch. But when it came to do the actual painting, it needed to be an interior piece. But I spent about 2 weeks wrestling with this lion and this image of the lion. So it kind of worked more than it didn't, but there were times when we led each other astray as well.
Right.
And I think that's just how.
Yeah,
How
it's
it
part of
is.
the process.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if anybody has any questions.